Hello, bonjour, konnichiwa, hello. My name's Rachel, and thanks for joining me today on Awwwards Academy. Awwwards Academy, here we go. Yeah, so trying to get to the next slide, but it's not working. Okay, so welcome to Awwwards Academy. Today, I am going to be your host for this session. My name's Rachel, and I'm the community manager, event producer at awwwards.com. So if you've ever been to any of our conferences, we may have met. So hello. So we're coming to you live today from Awwwards Academy. Awwwards Academy is an online interactive learning platform for designers and developers with a unique chance to do face-to-face question and answer sessions with the people who are going to be doing their workshops and courses. So if you want to watch again, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I will put a link in the chat where you can go and find our YouTube channel. So hello, Bruno. Hello, Paula. Hello, Hola from Ecuador. Okay, so let's get started with today's live. Hello, Anna, and hello, Craig.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I am excited to be here. Thanks, Rachel. My name is Craig. I'm a product lead at Google in our go-to-market team focused on progressive web apps. Surprise. It's not a very descriptive job title. So what I actually do is I try and help people adopt progressive web apps by working on Google's sales strategy and operations, creating materials like the ebook, and running events, Google conversions, and creating programs in Google. So joining me is Anna. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Rachel. I'm super excited about this webinar today, where I will talk later about UX best practices for progressive web apps. So I'm Anna. I'm a mobile user experience specialist at Google. My team, we are working with different companies outside of Google. So basically Google partners all over the world. And what we are doing, we are helping them optimize user experience in their websites or apps in order to improve conversion rates. So this hopefully gives my team some understanding how those experiences on web apps on desktop can look like, what does the good look like, and this is what we're going to share with you today. So stay tuned. Back to you, Craig.
Thank you. Back to me. That's always scary. Okay, so today we're going to be talking through a few chapters from the ebook that myself and Anna and some of our colleagues recently published with Awwwards. If you haven't seen the screen or read the book, it's called Progressive Web Apps, the Superpowers of the Web and Native Apps Combined. Do check it out if you haven't already, but wait until after the stream, please. The agenda, I'm going to talk through what installable progressive web apps are and their benefits, plus some product strategies. And then Anna will go through the exciting stuff, the UX best practices for promoting PWA install, designing installable and reliable experiences, and a case study as well. So after we've both spoken, which will take probably about 30 minutes, depending on how much time I take up, we will do live Q&A, like Rachel said before. So please pop your questions into the chat, and we will do our best to answer as many of them as possible, as well as possible. So let's go. Installable progressive web apps. What are they? What are their benefits? Let's find out. Thought you'd like that, Anna. So progressive web apps are built with the web, and the web has two distinguishing superpowers, right? The first is the widest reach of any platform. It spans every kind of device and screen size. And the second is links that enable search indexing for organic discovery and trivial sharing of content between users with just a URL. These superpowers have made the web unstoppable as a platform on desktop. However, on mobile devices, instead of the web, native app stores are often thought of as the go-to platform for both users and developers. So while browsers are still central for users on mobile, they are very popular. Every device now has its own app store, and user behavior has changed because of this. Why? Well, from a user perspective, users want the best experience possible, and that has often been through native applications. And as well, installing an app is the easiest way for a user to come straight back into an experience. Bookmarks are great on desktop browsers, but it's not so great on mobile. And from a developer perspective, many of the capabilities that help create a great experience on mobile, they require deep integration into the underlying operating system, and many of those capabilities were just previously not available on the web. Well, that's changed. So these days, the web natively supports quite a lot of the capabilities that applications need, including media and streaming media access, which lets you capture photos and videos from any camera on the device, shape detection, including barcode and face detection, biometric authentication, including face and fingerprint, and quite a lot more, like you can see here in the graphic on the screen, whichever way around it is. Be sure to go and check out the Web Capabilities Project, also known as Project Fugu, for a full list of what capabilities are being worked on for the web. I left the URL there, but if you just search for it, you'll be able to find it. So, where are we? There we go. Progressive web apps are a pattern for using web technology to build great apps with all the features and functionality users expect from a modern app on mobile or desktop. That includes all the capabilities I just mentioned, plus features like instant loading, offline modes, push notifications, and installability. So progressive web apps really, they combine the superpowers of the web, reach and linkability, with those of native applications, so device integrations. They can be discovered in the web browser and used immediately. You can access everything without installing, and content from PWAs can be shared with a URL, and the person receiving the URL can access the content whether they have the PWA installed or not. If the user then chooses, they can install the PWA and get the device integrations they expect from an app, such as being accessible from familiar discovery and launch surfaces like the home screen or the app tray. They get a standalone experience, which is separate from the browser, and native device services such as the app switcher and app settings. Progressive Web App Install is supported on all major browsers, although the install experience does vary a little bit. On the left here, you can see the default prompt experience on Chrome on Android. So both Chrome and Edge on Android offer full control over the install experience, prompting experience. And Anna will talk much more about customizing this a bit later on. In the middle, you can see the default experience on Android Firefox. There's a little icon in the, I've circled it there, in the browser bar that has a plus symbol, and users can install by tapping on this icon. Safari on iOS does require users to manually install PWAs from the Actions menu. There isn't a default prompt. Again, Anna will speak much more about creating an install prompt for iOS, like you see on the right here, later on. And let's not forget that PWAs can also be installed on desktop from Chrome and Edge browsers on all operating systems. That includes Chrome OS, Linux, Mac, Windows. Users can tap the install icon in the address bar, like you see circled here again. It's a plus symbol. And you can also use a custom prompt as well. And once installed, PWAs can be launched from the app tray, just like any other app, and launch into full screen separate from the browsers. And as well, progressive web apps can be published to the Google Play Store and discovered alongside any other app listed there. A PWA published in Play is like any other Android app, except it's built with the web. These apps are great for users as they're really small in file size, generally under 2 megabytes, which is tiny for an Android application and is great for storage-conscious users. And there's no need for users to constantly install updates, as the changes that you make into the PWA are immediately available in the app. They're great for developers and designers as well, as you don't need to maintain a separate code base and design. It's the web in an Android app. If you want to learn more about this, there's loads that you can learn. I've left a link here to web.dev/. using a PWA in your Android app. So that was very quick. Now I'm going to move on to product strategies for PWAs. While acknowledging the benefits that PWAs offer, businesses sometimes still have concerns about how to best deploy them in a manner that complements existing native applications. So I'm going to talk through 3 strategies that reflect how businesses with various needs can use PWAs in complement to native applications to provide the best experience to as many users as possible. Before that, I want to touch on the value of app users. Businesses often tell us that native app users are the most valuable and loyal with a higher lifetime value when compared with web users. So are native app experiences really so much better than web experiences? Or is it simply that the most loyal users are more likely to install an app? Well, data from various businesses across the globe suggests that it's the latter. Here's one example. The successful online fashion shop About You, they deployed a PWA and offered install from the browser, in addition to their native application, which was available in Play. And they found that users who installed the PWA generate sales 5 times higher than the average mobile user, and that they behave similar to users of their native application. So what I take from this is that installing an app, whether it's a PWA or a native app, it's an app that generates business uplift. So maximizing the total installed user base just makes a lot of sense. So into the strategies. The first one is go all in on web and rely solely on a PWA to deliver a great experience to all users cost effectively. With one code base and design, your resources can be focused on building new features and experiences rather than maintaining separate platforms. For this strategy, you develop a great PWA, publish it in Play. For promotion from the browser, promote the PWA install, and in Play, users can discover and install your app there. This is best for businesses that probably best for those that don't have a native app already, or maybe have an outdated Android app, or an app that relies heavily on web content as it is. The main pros is that it consolidates all your development into one base and provides a consistent user experience no matter how people discover you. The biggest con, of course, is that if you need some functionality that's not available on the web, then this won't work for you. For most of you, this probably won't be a big concern, though. So the second strategy is to complement your existing native apps with a light app. So the terms light or Go were coined to differentiate the lighter, faster, however, sometimes less specialized web-based experiences from that of a native app for businesses that are looking to offer both. Twitter Lite, Pinterest Lite, Google Maps Go are some examples that spring to mind. So for this strategy, build a great PWA and also publish it in Play alongside your existing native applications. From the browser, promote the native app installed to users, but if they decline, then promote the PWA using a light value proposition. Anna will talk more about value props as well in her part. In Play, use the light naming for the PWA there so that users can differentiate from the native app and choose which is their preferred experience. So this is a great strategy for businesses that already have a good but maybe heavy native Android application and want to grow the installed user base by offering a better experiences to users on maybe mid to low-end devices. It's particularly important for those with growth ambitions in emerging markets where data plans are expensive and storage space and device power can be quite limited. But just also remember that in any market, there are a huge volume of people on mid to low-end devices as well. So it really does work in complement everywhere. The big advantage of this, of course, is that you can expand your reach to your app installed user base reach to people who just previously never would have installed your application and help you grow your user base. In terms of cons, well, There aren't any big ones. It does require managing 2 listings in play and using analytics to kind of segment your users for promotion of PWA or native app in the browser. Oh, and the third one, the last one before I hand over to Anna for the exciting UX stuff, is really a low friction strategy. So help get as many of your users installing your apps as possible by minimizing install friction. So this is really best for businesses that can offer a comparable experience across PWA and native. So for this strategy, you would build a great PWA and continue to build great native applications as well. When it comes to promotion, in the browser, the least friction is PWA install. It only takes two taps, and the user doesn't need to leave the browser at all to install. And from Play, having just one listing there, the native application means that user doesn't have to choose between 2 different versions in front of them. A great tip to avoid promoting your PWA in the browser to people that already have the native app installed, which would be a very bad and annoying thing, is to use this API called get installed related apps. There's a web.dev / link to that as well. You can check it out. Kind of does exactly what it says on the tin. It means that you can stop prompting people with your PWA install if they already have your native app installed. So this strategy here, it's ideal to reduce install friction and to make your promotional strategies simple. The main cons is that, well, it does require maintaining both a progressive web app and a native application when there might be little difference between the experience anyway. And for users, there's no light option in Play if you do it exactly as I've written it here. It is a really safe option for those businesses that already have great native apps and want to grow the total install base by using PWA to just exactly complement the existing app strategies. So that was really quick. If you do have questions, please pop them in the chat, and I'll start thinking if I have an answer to them for the Q&A. But now I'm going to hand over to Anna to talk about UX best practices. Over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so over to best practices part. I'm not sure to what extent it's going to be more exciting than the strategy part, but maybe a little bit more visual. So hopefully it's going to serve as an inspiration to all UX designers who dialed in today. So thanks everyone again. I'm Anna, mobile user experience specialist at Google, and I'm going to present you some best practices for promoting progressive web app installation, for designing offline experiences, for designing installed experience, and finish off with a case study. Okay, so the ground rule of promoting progressive web apps is that it should happen at the right moment of the user journey. And the key here is to prevent the default experience on Android that Craig has mentioned, right? So this mini info bar that you can see on the screenshot on the right-hand side is kind of like was originally developed as a temporary solution. It is generated by the browser, so it really has no way to know when is the right moment to appear. So the best practice here would be to prevent this mini info bar from showing and instead use the customized UI prompts, right? So you can have a look at the web.dev resources here on the slide to see how to technically do that. And now what Craig has mentioned before, he's got this covered. Do not promote progressive web apps to the users who already have the native app installed again, right? So, and this is exactly the web.dev article that he was referring to. And the last but not least, in our PWA ebook, we have a whole chapter on measurement and how you can implement analytics to measure and optimize the install funnel. It's very important to listen to those events and analyze that. Okay, so now moving on to some basic best practices of a good install prompt or a good install experience, right? So apart from preventing this default experience on Android, you should also consider showing the this prompt when it's appropriate in the right moment of the user journey, right? So that the user considers and it adds a value to them. You should use a value proposition, right? It's no secret that all people need motivation to complete any task. You can use visuals like icons or maybe small illustrations to illustrate that actions. And then having it designed, the install prompt designed so that it looks and feels native to the website, it's very, very important. And we are going to have a look into a few examples. But now first appear where appropriate. And the ground rule here is to never ask people to install the PWA in their first visit. Instead, you can consider engaging people who have already spent some time on the website. They may have already browsed through a few pages or completed a certain task. For example, you can maybe place this install call to action in the side navigation, as you can see here in the mockup on the left, so that it's not interrupting any user flow, and at the same time, it's always can be rediscovered throughout the journey, and the user is aware where this button is. You can also show an app install banner on the top, like in the screenshot in the middle, but maybe at a later stage when the user has already browsed through some of the content, right? So maybe on the second visit. Or maybe you can engage the user with this install prompt at the end of a certain task, for example, on the checkout page, the order confirmation page, asking them, well, do you want to install the app so that you have your orders always with you? Which brings me to the next point, to the language, to the copy, right? To the value proposition, how exactly you are asking people to install the app. And here, again, as I said, it's very, very important to speak the language of the user, right? You don't want to be too technical. They don't want to hear the terms like progressive web apps, right? They probably don't know what that is, but in general, the rule here is that you need to speak about the benefits that people are going to get and not the app features, right? So it's kind of this basic sales principle, but then whenever we write the copy for our website, it's very, very important to remember that. And then also another thing about writing the copy for a value proposition, don't use any negative wording. So for example, if I see a phrase, something phrased like, don't worry about this, then there's going to be like a follow-up question in my head. Oh, should I be worrying about something? So it always adds this negative connotation. So instead, always use, positive, affirmative value propositions. That's going to, again, really vividly describe the benefits of the install and what's that going to bring to the user. Moving on to the next thing, designing the prompt in a way that it looks and feels native, as if it belongs to the website. Because historically, pop-ups, right? You can see the example of a pop-up on the right-hand side. Pop-ups have become really popular for promoting app installs. However, any pop-up is a very intrusive experience. People hated pop-ups. They have, didn't like them since the 90s, and they don't like them still. So, there's a lot of research out there that says that people, for any pop-ups, they would rather dismiss that and not going to read and consider that. So instead of having this pop-up design or any overlay design, consider making this prompt look and feel as if it's part of the website, part of the journey, and maybe it can be easily dismissed or revisited and rediscovered at a later stage. Now, so just to finish a few things about the install, as Craig has mentioned, on iOS, there is a install opportunity, but you need to guide users on how you can do that. One of the examples in Craig's presentation was the example from our ebook that you can also install and use as a PWA on any of your device. But yeah, here is also this kind of mock that shows that whenever a user clicks the install the app button on the top, there is this overlay that's going to show up and guide the user through the browser installation process, right? So where exactly in the menu they should go and what to tap next. Yeah, so and then on same for desktop, it's also possible on desktop. Progressive web apps can be installed on Chrome and Edge browsers, and here you also need to guide the user through the process, because there is going to be this icon is going to appear in the Omnibox in the browser bar, and it's going to wiggle to draw users' attention. So again, you can consider also providing any like UI prompts to make sure users are aware how they can install this. Great. So now moving on to installed experience. So once the progressive web app has already been installed, it should meet user expectations that would probably come from the world of native apps, right? Even if you look at the icon, right? This is the icon of our PWA ebook, which is installed. And it's just going to look like any other app, right? And it should feel and look and feel to the user like any other native app. And the things to consider here would be the icons, color schemes, launch screen, and a full screen navigation. So let's start from the first one with the icons. It's quite simple for Android. You can consider designing maskable or adaptable icons that they can adapt the shape of any icon. They can adapt the shape of the icon required by the phone manufacturer, right? And then for iOS, you can use the regular iOS design guidelines, but note that iOS does not use icons from the manifest file. So you need to make sure to add the Apple Touch icon meta tag with the proper image. And then for, there you go, for color schemes, right? The second point, it's really great that on Android, the browser bar can also, the browser bar color can be changed to match your brand color. How cool is that? And then it's also going to affect the color of the system notifications panel. And you can see it's going to affect both modes, the standalone mode and the browser mode, right? So what is it, the standalone mode? Once the PWA has been launched, first installed, but then launched from the home screen, it's going to open full screen with no browser bar on top, exactly like a native app, right? And it's going to be even separate from the browser when the user is cycling through the app switcher. So first of all, consider how you can design the splash screen, right? And so here, when when the app is being launched, then just the Android Chrome browser is gonna read from the manifest file the name of the app, and then it's gonna take the background color and the icons that are already stored in there, and it's gonna generate this splash screen for you. On iOS, there is no splash screen customization at the moment, but there is a workaround. Again, you can implement meta tags to specify pre-generated splash screens of different sizes. And yeah, and so then after that, when the progressive web app has been already launched, it's full screen. It's very exciting to have more real estate. So then we don't have to, we have this additional space that used to be taken by the browser bar on the top, but now we can fully use it. But at the same time, certain browser capabilities are going to be absent, right? So for example, on iOS, there is no longer going to be the back and forward buttons. So in this case, you can consider adding some additional navigation into your PWA when it's open in a standalone mode. For example, it can be just simply buttons back and forward. It can be breadcrumbs, or you can rethink maybe having the navigation designed in a different way. At the same time, also on both Android and iOS, the user will no longer be able to copy the URL and, maybe if they want to forward it to any other apps or messengers. So consider implementing any call to actions like share that's going to trigger a web share API, and you can have a read about the web share API on web.dev. Moving on to just some design considerations, right? Again, so designing for a full screen also means designing for a longer screen. And specifically on mobile, you can think about this as designing for mobile ergonomics, right? In general, bottom of the screen is considered to be a bit more ergonomic, like that's my notifications in there. So a bit more ergonomic location, because if I'm holding my mobile device with just one hand, I don't need to change the way I hold it if I want to interact with the bottom of the screen, right? And then if with the top, I need to, engage my second hand with that. So just have a think of this. You can anchor just the key call to actions to the bottom of the screen. Testing a bottom navigation in general is a good idea, or anchoring modal pop-ups in the bottom instead of the center of the screen. And if you are using both progressive web apps and native apps, if you're providing both of these experiences to your users, just make sure they are consistent so that the user can easily switch and recognize the experience. Now, moving on to designing reliable experience, and this is what we mean by designing the offline experience, right? And here again, the inspiration comes from the world of native apps, because this is where some offline functionality is always going to be there, right? You know, at least the UI is available, and then some error messages can pop up and say like you're offline. So here it's absolutely the same. When you're designing your offline web experience, you can think of some of the questions that you must answer, right? So the questions on the left-hand side here, they're kind of the must checklist that you need to go through when you're defining your offline experience. And the questions on the right-hand side here, I just gave you a few ideas for the how might we exercise. So you can do any design thinking exercise, maybe even run a design sprint if you have heard of that. If you haven't, you can just Google design sprints. And you can really brainstorm with your team how the offline experience can look like, what new you can bring to the user, and how you can turn it to the competitive advantage. But on the very basic level, for any offline experience, what you need to do, you need to inform the users about the change of state. And you can use 3 elements to do that: the copy, the icons, and the colors, right? The ground rule here is always to use at least 2 of these 3 elements to inform the user. If, for example, you're using just the color, imagine just graying out the website. It can be interpreted in multiple ways, right? It can be also interpreted as if some items are out of stock, or it cannot be simply accessible to 100% of users. So just simply add a copy, add an icon to avoid misinterpretations. And for copy, it's all the same rules as for the copy for the install value proposition. So keeping things simple. Here also, like, it's important, don't blame the user for going offline, like you got disconnected, or don't blame your own systems. It's really important to not to undermine the credibility to your service, to your product in such a vulnerable moment, right, when the connection goes off. And now the most popular component to inform the user about the change of state, to put this copy, is the pop-up toast, or in Google Material Design, it's also called a snack bar. So it can literally appear in any place of the UI, on the top or on the bottom of the screen somewhere else. It can also contain this value, like the copy and the call to action. It can be dismissible or not. So just make sure it does not interfere with the key, with any navigation elements on the page, if it's on the top or on the bottom. And then along with just informing the user about the change of state, right? You are offline or you're back online. You can also think about what alternatives you're going to provide to the user while they are offline, what they can do. And this includes just simply continue browsing where they were, or showing maybe some placeholder static offline page. We're going to have a look at a few examples of that. Try to be useful and provide key information for the user. Try to entertain people so they stay on the website, and then let users continue finishing the tasks. Let's have a look at a few more examples of how these can look like for different industries. So this is number one, right? And here caching can be used to allow users to continue browsing some content when they're offline, and you can use pre-caching in order to make for users available some key sections of the website, for example, the top categories or a wish list. And then you can also use runtime caching to make sure to make available any previously viewed page, right? But in this case, you just need to make sure you're talking to the user clearly about what is available and how they can navigate through this, right? And where they can find it. Right, these are some examples of a simple placeholder page that you can also think of. You can think about the way how users can engage with your brand while they're offline, right? If the website doesn't work, then maybe they can get in touch with the call center or visit your store, right? And then about being useful, it's important also to show to the user some relevant, important information from their personal account. For example, if you're a travel company, you can use some key details on the itinerary, some boarding passes, I don't know, booking details. If you're a retailer, the same, you can show order history, and because there is this use case that the connection might go off quite often at the pickup points, which are probably like underground. And then if you're in the entertainment company, then you can show just the favorite media tracks or the videos saved by the user. There's a few examples of designing fun experiences and making attempt to entertain users, right? Offering them some game or a puzzle or a fun fact. So just to occupy their time while they're waiting for while connection is back, right? So if you cannot be useful or cannot do anything else, then you can also think of designing another game or entering a game in space. And this is kind of example of a little bit more advanced offline experience. You let the user complete the task they were in the middle of when they were online, right? So it can be filling out the form, it can be adding to a cart or wish list. But here it's very important to talk to the user, use the copy, being very clear that their actions will not be wasted when they're back online. And yeah, just to finish off the offline part, which I hope was very exciting for you, do implement analytics, right? As it's also possible to measure the offline usage and events. And so you need to understand how people really interact with your offline experience, what you can change, and if you can, improve it in any way. And now I'm going to present a case study from Weekend Desk, and I'm going to present this from the point of view of measuring the impact from Progressive Web App, which is quite a complex technology, right? And it has this kind of umbrella of different sub-technologies and features that you will implement on your websites. So the best practice here, when you want to understand the impact from that, is to measure the impact of each feature on its own to ensure the clear data and the full picture. So here's what Weekend Desk have done. They had really strategic interest in improving mobile experience and making it consistent across web and app, because 60% of their sessions were coming from mobile, web, and app. And what they've done, they have gradually added this modern web functionality to their website and transformed it into a progressive web app. So this is a breakdown of the features. As you can see, First of all, thanks to the service worker, the website became much faster. And then also the offline functionality was there. The user could access the wish list, which is absolutely fantastic offline experience. And then the install prompt was only showing up on the second page visited. So again, they wouldn't engage with the user with the user on their first visit. They would first give them an opportunity to browse through some pages and then offer to install the app. And of course, the last but not least, the app was also installable in the Google Play Store. The result of this was, for the users, right, it's the same ultra fluid, consistent experience across different platforms, across web and app. For the product team, it's faster deployment of new features. It's lower maintenance cost with a maintenance cost of just a single code. And for the business, of course, it's high conversions. In this case, it was 2.5 more conversions. The website, which is much faster, and then much more engagements in terms of page views and in terms of the time spent on site. So I hope this all was quite inspirational for you. Sorry for taking a little bit too much time, but I was trying to be super brief, and you can read much more of this content in our PWA ebook that we have published with a few more authors from Google. And now myself and Craig, we're happy to take the live questions that I hope you have submitted in the chat, and I'm handing it over back to Rachel.
Hello, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Craig. Yes, so we got absolutely loads of questions here on the chat. So thank you, everyone, for getting involved. And let me see. And we're going to kick off with this question from the guy in Lisbon. Question from Bruno in Lisbon. Hello, Bruno. He asks, is a PWA just a website without the browser interface?
Hello, Bruno from Lisbon. Oh my goodness, we're big. We just went big. Hello, and I can have a go at this one if you like. The question was, is a PWA just a website without the browser interface? So good question. A PWA is a website that uses modern web technology to have a better web experience. One of the features, sure, is once it's installed, you can have it in standalone mode without the browser UI. I think a PWA can be really hard to define because it's not a thing, it's a pattern of development. So there's lots of different ways to implement different technologies to have a progressive web app. I think Lighthouse does a really good job of showing what some base criteria is. So it's installable, it works offline, it's pretty fast. It's not, it can't do any more about telling you what a great progressive web app is. So I would summarize into a progressive web app is much more than just a website without the browser interface. It's intended to be a website that provides all of the functionality users would expect on mobile, but through a website rather than through a native application. Anna, long answer. Do you have anything else?
No, I think it's also, you have already mentioned this, but it's also important to understand that even if the user does not install it, it's still a progressive web app, right? It's still, and I can see there was another question, like what makes a good progressive web app, right? It's like having this mobile first experience, having this user first experience, and it can and it should be everywhere, right? On the web, on the mobile web, in the app, and it's kind of the same. Good best practices, good UX best practices are applicable everywhere. So yeah, it's, as a technology, it's much more, right? And you can implement just one feature, sub feature, or multiple of them. But for the user, from the user perspective, it should be just a really good, consistent experience everywhere.
Okay, good, thank you. And let's see. Oh, okay, we've got another. Oh, can you hear me? It says connection lost.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Right, so question from Eleanor. Are there any features in Safari that can help to promote the PWA?
Anna?
Yeah, so in Safari, assuming it's, as we already mentioned, it is possible to use Safari browser to guide the users how to install the PWA, and you can implement different like overlay banners that's gonna tell the user how exactly they can do that. So there is this add to home screen button in Safari, and we need to make sure users are aware how they can do that. And yeah.
Okay, cool. And okay, so yeah, we've got a question from Sarah in Scotland, who's a UX designer. How big is the team dedicated to PWA at Google?
I have no idea. Google's a big company, so we have engineering teams in Chrome, product managers. It's big enough. If you want to see some of the people some of the wider team that work on Chrome and the Chrome platform, check out web.dev/live. There's a whole bunch of them that are going to be producing videos there. So this sounds like I'm not answering. I have no idea what the answer is.
Yeah, and there's also a big community of supporters, right? The people who may not be directly working on the PWA, but then we would still be, I don't know, supporting the technology and yeah, just.
Okay, all right. I think you covered that. Newsflash, my mouse has run out of battery, so I can't scroll down to the next question. So, Craig, is it okay if you take the next question, because I can't view it? I think it's from Mireia. How do I get my company to...
Where are we at? There's Sarah from Scotland. There's Sarah from Scotland, not Valencia. Mireia, who is a UX designer in Spain, has asked, how do I get my company to buy into progressive web apps? I'm excited about it, but the rest of the business isn't that interested. Oh, good question. I can try and answer it briefly. From my experience, which is companies telling me how they've done this successfully, is as designers, as developers, we get excited about technologies and functionality, and the rest of the business often doesn't care. I think the way to get the business excited is to position these technologies behind a business objective or an existing user experience project that you have already. Right? For example, if your business is really focused on growing the value, the purchase rate from existing customers, then functionality like install and push is really going to help you achieve that, right? So I think just to kind of not go on forever is put it back into business and user lenses rather than the technology or the design features. Anna, anything on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can just maybe add, we are seeing the same things across when designers are trying to pitch any, design process or design change. And it's really, really hard to quantify this value, right? So you need to always be able to tie back to the business metrics, and specifically those business metrics that matters to your boss, right? It can be different ones. Maybe have a look at this Weekend Desk case studies or any more case studies that are published around there. And as you see, it's kind of this impact can be measured in different dimensions, even like it's the cost of production, right? Maybe that's something that's going to help you to pitch this, and maybe that you're going to make this process a little bit more efficient inside your company, and that's going to be a value add for your boss. Or if it's the speed, if it's just, if your organization is bought into this whole idea of designing user first, then maybe just use this UX arguments. But other than that, always try to quantify and transition this to the business value.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got my mouse back.
Is your mouse back? Oh, it's good.
So Hitesh, UX designer from South Africa. Hello, Hitesh. Thank you for your question. When you design a PWA, how do you unify the navigation differences between Android and iPhone? So when you design a PWA, do you need to have one version for iPhone with iPhone application, which you then push to the App Store, and then another PWA for Android with the hamburger menu? So it's two separately designed apps.
Okay, I can start, and then Craig, maybe if you have any more thoughts on this. So it depends, okay, right? We cannot say there's one way of doing this, and if it's like a bottom navigation or hamburger menu, it depends. We've seen multiple ways of implementing this, and many companies undertake different approach depending on the strategy, and Craig has presented a few strategies in his part. What we kind of advocate for is the consistent experience across different platforms, because again, once the app is installed, it's going to be full screen, right? And there's going to be no more browser navigation capabilities. And then, I don't know, you can, on Android, this back button is going to be anyway, whether it's website or an app. So have a think just like about making any experience consistent, and if you can work towards that. I wouldn't comment specifically on the hamburger menu, whether it's a good solution or not. Again, it may depend on your in-app navigation capabilities, right? So to what extent you want to expose different destinations, or to what extent you want to unify them all behind the hamburger menu. But I would just think towards having this consistent experience, like maybe even mobile first experience, and then if it's not possible, then maybe for the web, I don't know, think of how you can make this, how you can work towards this.
I would maybe just echo a little bit of what you said there. Progressive web apps are built with the web, so it's the web. All of the beauty of working across different devices and different screen sizes and different browsers comes with the always requiring some considerations on how you do make it work across different devices and different browsers, so that it is a good experience everywhere. So any website you're building, you do need to have some browser considerations already, and then it's really up to you, like Anna said, how much you want to design a different experience from iOS or Android or other screen, or have a consistent feel across them. Users probably don't switch too much between iOS and Android devices every day. Mm-hmm. They do often switch between mobile and desktop devices, so at least maintaining some consistency in those trees makes sense.
Okay.
Cool.
Right.
Do we have more? We have time for more? Let's keep going.
Yeah, we do. We've got a few more minutes, so we'll get these questions done. So we've got Daniel from Nigeria. Hi, Daniel. Daniel is a front-end developer, and he wants to know, how do you cache API requests to be later sent when the user comes online?
Good question. I'm not sure exactly which request that you mean. I would suggest you check out web.dev/reliable, which has a load of resources, workbox specific or custom, on loads of different ways of caching. That's as best as I can answer that one. Sorry.
Okay. And we had another question from Ricardo. Does Google rank better sites with this type of technology?
We got a ranking question. I can speculate as much as you can. I have, we don't work in the ranking part of the business, so it's actually completely separate from us. I couldn't say. What I know is everything that's publicly facing, which is sites which have better experiences and unique content and good links coming into them, are going to rank well. That doesn't need to be a PWA. It can be, right? I think maybe something to keep in mind, though, is the use of JavaScript and ranking. And that's often a concern of SEO teams, is if I have loads of JavaScript or single-page applications, is that going to have an impact on my ranking? We have a wonderful developer relations person for, I don't want to say ranking, but for ranking. His name is Martin Splitt. He has some great videos on YouTube about SEO and JavaScript. And I believe that tomorrow in web.dev/live, he also has a couple of sessions on SEO and JavaScript. So I think maybe to sum up is, I don't know, good websites rank better than bad websites, and be mindful on how you use Java, or use JavaScript in the right way so that it doesn't negatively affect you.
Okay. All right. Okay. There's another question that I'd like to ask on behalf of the awards community, and it is, how can I become UX at Google, or how to start out as a UX designer?
Hannah?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So I can't probably, share any specifics of the interview process and any hacks, but overall, if you do want to work in UX design and in such a big company as Google, you first of all need to probably understand where exactly in UX design you want to be, right? Because it's multiple areas. Even like at Google, we have maybe more than 10 different jobs in UX, right? That it starts from UX research, content strategy, and UI design, UX engineering. So really, really different skill set, absolutely different skill set for every one of them. And then you need to understand what you like the most, where you want to develop yourself, and definitely building a portfolio. It's a great way to start, right? Because this is the number one thing that you're going to be asked during the interview or even before. So building the portfolio, and if you don't have any practical experience, try to have one. There's multiple opportunities that you can find. Maybe you can start, I don't know, consulting your friend's startup company on UX, and then it's going to be like one of your first UX designs. So I would say these days there's plenty of resources on education, right? And you can find them all online. The Awwwards Academy is a great resource for you there. But like the practical experience is going to be something that is going to be asked straight away. So make sure you have that along with the different education. So yeah, knowing what you want and then building up the experience behind. And yeah, it's going to be, and definitely just like, again, Google is a massive organization, and the UX community is quite small relatively to the engineering one. So be prepared to, sell the UX and design ideas, the questions that was asked earlier about, like, oh, how do I sell this to my organization? So we get to do this a lot as well. And yeah, be prepared to quantify the value of good design and prove this to the business.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're going to do one last question. And there's a question from Lawrence, and it's, if you have an idea how much are PWAs being adopted in developing countries where mobile data is expensive?
As a quantitative idea, I don't know quantitatively. So but it does. Progressive web apps lend themselves really well to emerging markets because the use case is super clear. It's like, these are really small, low on file size. They don't cost a lot for the user. So there seems to be a good shift, or a larger shift in emerging markets towards progressive web apps, because the user need is really, really obvious. So web development is much leaner, small file size, and at least offering a light option compared to a native application, or in complement to a native application, is really kind of a no-brainer if you want to reach large-scale emerging market populations. I know we had a case study from is it Mintra? We had a case study from a company at CDS last year. They joined PJ on stage. I can dig that out and link to it, but I would say emerging markets is probably a little bit ahead of the rest of the world, primarily because it's easier for them to build the business case, because the user need is so obvious that small file size, fast applications are just really important. The rest of us will get there.
Yeah, I sorry, I just wanted to add that I work with emerging markets quite a lot, and there's, as we see, a lot of cases that you just need to search for them a little bit more. They may not be as popularized as the rest of the cases, and again, it's sometimes it is a PWA, but you don't know as a user, right, that it is the one. So yeah, we can have a look with Craig and maybe publish, add few links to this webinar description if there is this opportunity. But yeah, definitely it's massive opportunity for emerging markets, and we do have cases there.
Okay, excellent. Yes, so if you have got some links, what we'll do is we will do a tweet linking to the Watch Again on YouTube, and also we'll share any links of stuff that you've talked about today. So it's 6 o'clock, so it's time to wrap up. So thank you so much, guys, for today. It was so exciting to have you for our first ever live webinar. So
thank you very much for having us.
Very exciting as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so yes, so we've actually got another live session tomorrow. We're going to be joined by Julian from Build in Amsterdam, and he's going to be doing a live review about their Site of the Month winning site, Powerhouse Company. So join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central European time. And yeah, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch all the sessions again. So thanks everyone so much for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. And we're looking forward to doing lots more live sessions with you on Awwwards Academy. Okay, thank you. Bye.